Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Tegan and Sara, very pleased to meet you. I was lucky enough to be at the show last night at the Bloomsbury Bowling Lanes. It was really enjoyed it. How did you find it?
We really enjoyed it. It's like, when we come to London, generally we're doing more traditional performances. Last time we were here, we played at the Forum, and before that, Glastonbury and Roundhouse. So it's a little bit more like intimate lights and the show, and it's big and whatever. So last night was cool because we're actually getting to meet and greet with some of the fans and playing a smaller room where you can actually see everybody, and so
it's not every day that they brand a whole bowling alley with your name.
And then to play different arrangements of the songs. We played a more stripped down set, so it's cool.
Hey, I mean, you're very personable with the audience. Has that always sort of come very natural?
Yeah, we always used to joke that back in the early days when we started out, we were our first professional gig, we were in high school, and we were told we needed to play 35 minutes, but we didn't have 35 minutes worth of music, so we had to make conversation in between, and it was funny. Like, we were basically just bantering back and forth, and then, even once we started touring as professional musicians, it was just the two of us, and when Sarah would break a string, I'd have to entertain the audience, and so we just developed, we were actually quite socially awkward, especially back then, but we developed this rapport with our audience and kind of created this sort of relationship between the two of us on stage and them, kind of creating this triangle. So it kind of just became our thing. I don't want to say shtick, because it's not a shtick, it's not pre-planned. Some nights we don't talk as much, some nights we don't have anything much to say, but it became this thing, where it was almost like people weren't just coming to see the music, they were coming to hear the stories about the songs or whatever else we were up to.
That must be twin sort of chemistry. Do you know what you're about to say to each other?
I wish I knew sometimes, because then I might start a song earlier, or let her talk longer, because sometimes she'll ramble on and tell a really long story, and then she'll get the funniest punchline in at the end, and I'll be like, oh, thank goodness I didn't cut her off. No, we don't have many twin superpowers, other than we've known each other so long. It's like, you can almost guess what's coming next, you just have this natural sort of instinct, so.
Stuff. Well, congratulations anyway on the new album Heartthrobs. It's charted in the US at number 3. Gather it sold about 50,000 copies yesterday at least. It's the highest chart position we've had so far. Obviously you must be over the moon.
It's going to our heads.
We're really excited. It's, by far and away, definitely the most successful chart position we've ever had in both the States and in Canada, and it feels like a great accomplishment too, because we really, we find that those types of things are so significant, still to so many people. When we first started out, you could never really hope for those things. We were just happy if people showed up to our shows, or if a record sold a certain amount of records over the course of a period of 2 years or something. Like, that was something that we could really gauge or look at and say, like, oh, this was a really good accomplishment. But to be at the phase in our career now where we can say, like, geez, we hope we have a top 5 Billboard debut, it's still sort of surreal to me that we're even talking like that, with our 7th record.
Why do you think that, Heartthrobs is suddenly launched out? Was it expected at all?
It is expected. If we were to say that, like, it's just totally unexpected, it would be sort of disingenuous.
We made intentional choices, like to have a very long lead up. We initially talked about putting the record out last year, and we decided to have 5 months to lead up to the record. So
we also weren't making the kinds of records in the past. We were much more. We knew we were making music that was more well suited to an indie path. We weren't counting on like radio or television and that sort of thing. We knew that we were, it was about a trajectory of like a longer cycle. And, with this record, we actually thought to ourselves, if we want to make a record that's going to end up on radio, or it's going to end up helping us maybe cross over into the mainstream in places like the UK, we know that we need to be able to do things like have a long lead single, and we need to be able to get into the Billboard charts. And so it's it's funny, because I think creatively and artistically, I don't think that we've dumbed it down or anything like that, but it's definitely meant that we've had to adjust the way we work and the way that we think about our career, and it's a challenge. But after a decade plus in the industry, it's kind of cool to do something new.
Yeah, normally everyone's careers sort of go downhill.
I know, God, we're like, come on, we'll get up this hill. Like, we're still really thinking that we're on our way up still. So.
Yeah, from 7th album, then your progression. How would you chart your progression from where you started to
it was
the
kind of
Heartthrobs?
like this. Yeah.
I mean, our first 2 records were indie release, you know, much more acoustic based. We weren't, people call them the folk years, but I don't think we were folk. I mean, we had a full band. I mean, there were keyboards and stuff, but it was definitely more organic sounding and acoustic based. And it was in, you know, the early 2000s that indie rock music got really popular. You know, you had Modest Mouse and Franz Ferdinand and the White Stripes, and there was a band from the west coast of Canada we loved called the New Pornographers, who are still around. And we just fell in love with their first record, Mass Romantic, and we reached out to their producers, and they said they would come on board. But they were like, well, we love your songs, and we love the new stuff, but we feel like the production on your past records, like we would want to lean more towards like what we've done with like the New Pornographers, for example. And Sara and I were all over that. You know, our training was more in piano, so you know, we just started adding keyboards. And so the evolution over the next 10 years has led us to today, which was that, you know, with each next record, there was still a lot of guitar, although more electric guitar, but a hell of a lot more keyboards and melodies. And Sara and I just started to use our vocals together more, a lot more interplay. You know, we were really influenced by a lot of 80s music, like early Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, but also Kate Bush, and I just love the way she uses her vocal as an instrument. And so that's something, like, especially on Heartthrob, that we really went for, just how can we turn our vocals into instruments, how can we layer as many melodies as possible. And it was sort of like all that fear we had at the beginning of our career in 1999, where it was like, well, you just want to record an acoustic song, because how are you going to translate it live if you do anything else? Well, now it's like, the world's our oyster, you know, we can kind of do whatever we want. So.
Yeah, what are you trying to get across then?
One of the things we can do is find very, very noisy locations.
Well, yeah, what was the album about, you know?
The newest record.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we both had challenges for ourselves, both personally and then for each other. You know, for me, Tegan talks a lot about having this piece of feedback about not necessarily writing self-deprecating songs or breakup songs, like trying to
she outlawed it.
Yeah, just trying to branch out in terms of like the perspective, and I think that we are both fairly well-rounded people and have been, you know, both successful and happy in romantic relationships, and yet we tend to write about the breakups or the, you know, the dissolving of a relationship, and that seems to be a perspective that we're very interested in. And I always find it, even when I'm happy, I find it much more interesting to talk about when things have gone wrong. And I think that's the human condition, you know, we want to deconstruct so that we know for next time how to do it better. And I think that for Tegan, you know, to come and write songs like Closer and Drove Me Wild, that were songs that were a bit more romantic and sentimental and probably fall on the, you know, the earlier stages of love, sentimental and romantic and flirtatious. I think that was a new step lyrically for her, and I was trying to do something a little bit less shoegazer, a little bit, you know, I tend to write the songs where people will say, oh, I didn't get it at first, but after like 10 or 15 listens, I really got your song. And you know, so I was going for something that was much more, you know, like deliberate and poppy. You know, I had listened to a lot of like Alicia Keys and Robin and Beyonce, and I mean, even like things like Justin Timberlake or Justin Bieber, or you know, like stuff where you don't have subtle melodies. Like these are like songs where you hear them and like the first time you hear the chorus, you're like, oh, I think this is the best song I've ever heard, you know. So when I was writing for this record, I was trying to think about, you know, things like that, other artists who I was really inspired by, and like trying to get into their brains, like how do they approach choruses or songs, you know.
What are your favourite tracks, you know, as we speak now on the album?
You know, we just learned the whole record live with the band, as we have a 6-piece band, and it's huge, and it sounds really amazing, but certain songs were really difficult for me to wrap my mind around playing live, so those are my favorites right now, because I feel like I've overcome my challenges. So the second track on the record, Goodbye Goodbye, I mean, I had to print sheet music just for the vocal harmonies. I mean, it just was so complicated, which I wish I could go back in a time machine and tell myself in the studio, like, as we were doing those vocals, like, you should probably get a recording of this and start now, like, to learn these parts. But yeah, that track, it's getting such a great response. And, you know, Sara in the past, you know, from time to time has songs where she really gives it, like, vocally. But I feel like on the last record especially, she was laid back a bit more, a little more subtle, whereas I was kind of, like, just in your face. And this record, hands down, I mean, Sara is just kind of full throttle on every song, and it's, you know, really amazing as another artist to be able to just sing backup on those songs. It's kind of like, it kind of feels like a bit of an honor. So I'd say Goodbye or Messed Up, those are like my go-to tracks right now. And they're both getting, Now I'm All Messed Up, hands down, is the fan favorite from this record so far. I Was a Fool, it sort of feels like it's coming in second. I mean, I'm basing this on two rudimentary tools of science, which is iTunes, the little like popularity thing, and @replies on Twitter, but Now I'm All Messed Up and I Was a Fool, like, and those are arguably like two of the most emotional songs on the record. So our audience seems to be very attracted to Heartbreak, which is great.
Yeah, Pleasure was the first single. Who chooses the singles? Do you look at things like that? You know, what Spotify says, what Facebook says, what the fan reaction is? What does Warner or you choose them?
I mean,
it's a democracy.
I think, like, you know, before anyone's heard the record, you know, we're often having these conversations, and, you know, even on records where we knew we weren't necessarily going to get like major radio play, or there wasn't going to be like an opportunity to go to pop radio, for example, you still have a ton of conversation about what should be the first song that people hear. Like how you sort of introduce the new record can really inform everything. It can, you know, the videos and the aesthetic for the album and the real tone of the production and the show and the live show. So, you know, I think this was the record where we knew when we went, like when we hadn't even made the record yet, like when we went into the studio, we knew that Closer was going to be a big song. Like we just knew based on...
People would hear the demo and
like the producer
about that hook right off the top.
Like our friends and people at the label and our family, and then producer Greg Kirsten, we had all talked about it quite extensively. Like, this is an important song. Like, we don't want to rush it. Let's look at it from a bunch of different angles. Let's write a couple different choruses and see which one feels the best. And we spent a lot of time talking about it, so it wasn't a surprise when we decided to lead off the album with it, which is fun. We're Virgos. We really like to know like very long lead. Yeah. Like if you could tell me what we're doing in like 2020, that'd be great. So it was actually like to go in with like a real, you know, premeditated, like this is probably going to be a focus song. We really should work on it. It gave us a lot to like sort of, you know, center the rest of the recording around.
Sure. Rob Caballo, Warner chairman, he was on the album himself. Mm-hmm. The Warner give you a lot of freedom, you know, artistically.
Oh yeah.
Very hands-on, obviously. But.
Yeah.
Sarah and I signed to Warner in 2007. We actually signed to Sire Records, and over the last two records, you know, Sire has become, you know, like home. Like it was really awesome, but the label has made a lot of changes in the last couple of years, and when the whole new board kind of came in, they got new owners, there was a new chairman, there's new presidents. Sarah and I went in because, you know, they were dropping a lot of artists, changing a lot of things. They were making sort of big decisions about a lot of artists' careers, and Sarah and I went in like and sort of pulled the like, you know, maybe we're indie, maybe this is not the right place for us. We're still selling less records on a major label than we did on an indie. Like, you know, maybe this isn't for us. And, you know, in their own words, they basically were like, they gave us three pieces of advice. You know, one was that over their dead body, like we weren't going anywhere, we weren't getting out of our contract, so we needed to work with them and figure something out, because they knew we were unhappy with how we felt. Like we didn't think our career wasn't going well or anything, we just weren't 100%. So that was the first thing, was you're staying, let's find something that works, which was so awesome of them. Like we rewrote our deal, we ripped it up and started fresh. And the second piece of advice they gave us was that we had imagined that we had this brick wall over our heads, that we couldn't get any bigger, we couldn't expand our audience, that we were limited by our gender and our sexuality. And they were like, we absolutely don't agree. We feel like you've put that limitation on yourself, and we have your back, and we will absolutely help you get to the next level. Let us help you, though. And the third piece of advice came from Rob Cavallo. He sat with Sarah and I for like 6 hours in this epic meeting about, just with him, just the three of us. He was like, play me a song on the acoustic guitar, let me see what you guys do. And we played him Call It Off. Sarah played the piano and I played the guitar, and then we talked for hours, and he was like, be brave, like do something fresh, do something completely different. Why are you held back? Like, you're so bright, you're so smart, you're so, like, you've got this whole career you've built, you're obviously incredibly ambitious. Stop being so Canadian. Stop being like, well, we're really content with what we have. You're not. Like, be ambitious, set your sights. And he's told us all these amazing stories about artists he'd worked with. Gotta set goals. So Sarah and I sat down and we wrote down all these things that we wanted and all these things we wanted to achieve. And then we went in and started writing Heartthrob. And so it's, you know, it's sort of like one of those things where I don't want to say that the label doesn't have a role in where we're at right now, because they really have. They've really, but the only role they had was almost a parental role, like of being like, go out there and show the world who you are. Like they were like almost like coaches. They were pepping us up all the time. So
superb. And then he also said, I want to be on the album, obviously.
Yeah, well, that was the part of why we'd gone in to originally speak with Rob, was to do a track with him for another project. And yeah, I just loved the way that the song turned out. We didn't end up using it for that project, so him and Greg sort of, you know, they got together, and Greg kind of helped push the song more in the direction of where we'd gone with the rest of the record. And we just saw Rob the other day, and he's like, thanks, he's thanking us, he's like, thanks so much for putting Love They Say on the record. And we were like, cool. He's awesome, you know.
Superb. Hey, you're both in long-term openly gay relationships. Do you feel that your audience sort of looks to you for guidance on gay issues, and you know, as role models, is there any sort of added pressure there?
It's funny because when we first started out, we were so young, you know, and I don't think anyone was looking to us for advice about anything, nor should they have been looking to us for advice. I mean, we were 19, 20 years old, and I think we were still figuring things out, not necessarily about our sexual orientation, but about relationships and that sort of thing. So I think, you know, in the early days, it was more about our experiences felt very authentic for people, and for kids maybe who didn't have, probably like us, who didn't necessarily have a ton of gay role models or people that they were looking up to. We felt that there was a natural flocking to the project from women and queer women. And now I think, you know, like 13 years later, we've obviously broadened our audience, and you know, we talk about this all the time, that just because you're gay doesn't mean you like everything gay, like, you know, or you like the byproduct of people who are gay, you know, like when we started to make more like indie rock records, you know, we would go out sometimes on tour, and there would be this more like just like community of people who would come out to see us because we were gay, and I could tell that they didn't necessarily like the music we made, but they liked us.
Yeah,
so, you know, initially it's a conflict, because you want people to come and see your shows, and you're glad they're interested in you, you know, socially or culturally or whatever. But at some point, those people don't stick around. They don't care about the music, so there's no incentive for them to come to the shows or to continue to be a fan of the band. So now I think we've arrived at probably a more appropriate place, which is like, you know, we definitely know we're role models for kids. We have experience, so now we feel like we can better be in the position to say, like, here's our perspectives on things politically, here's our perspective on things just personally. And so that feels much more comfortable for me. But then in a broader sense, we just have a fan base. You know, it's not necessarily gay. It's just, you know, it's all kinds of people who come to us because they like our music, and maybe they like what we have to say as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the White Stripes famously covered "Walking with a Ghost." Which other artists would you like to cover your songs?
Oh man,
it's always an honor.
Yeah, it's always, it really doesn't even have to be anyone that famous, you know, like, I mean, I see millions of YouTube videos from people covering our music all the time, and it's always very exciting. I mean, the closest we've gotten to that sort of thing is when artists remix our music too. And, you know, we're about to release a Closer remix record, and like the variety and quality of artists that ended up reaching out or agreeing to remix Closer even is astounding to me. So I hate saying who I want to collaborate with, because then I'm afraid this is the psychology of Tegan and Sara, the band, is that we're afraid of disappointment and being let down. So we rarely voice our expectations or our goals or whatever, because we get terrified of being let down or letting other people down. But I will say that we've had just enormous luck in coming up with these great collaborations. You know, everything from Tiesto and David Guetta to Lisa Loeb just put a record out last week, and she recorded 2 of my songs, and just even that, like, just to go full circle. Like, I remember watching Reality Bites as a teenager and seeing Lisa Loeb at the end in the music video, and like thinking Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke were like my heroes, and now to have been in the studio with her and have her record our music, I mean, I just feel like artists are so cool to me. I mean, there's something so amazing. I'll always be a fan.
There's also a way that when you make the music and it's your voice and your vision, it's very difficult to step outside of it and really hear what other people hear.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
But when someone covers your song,
it's interesting. Like, the first time it happened, we were on tour with Ryan Adams in like 2001 or something, and he used to cover sometimes a song called "Not Tonight" from our record "If It Was You," and I remember I'd never heard anyone sing our songs before, and it was as if for the first time I could really step back and hear the song, like, because with his voice and his the way he sort of informed the arrangement or whatever, I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, like I can really hear it, like for the first time. And he did an amazing job, but I mean, the truth is he probably could have done a shitty job and I still would have been like, oh my God, so cool, so weird. It's like surreal to hear. Maybe it's like maybe a writer or a director or something, when you've looked at your vision and your tone or aesthetic for so long, to have it completely rearranged or done differently, it can be very eye-opening.
And well, thanks a lot for your time. I'm aware that we're using up a lot of it. But what for music news watchers that haven't quite grasped Tegan and Sara yet, what 3 tunes would you pick of your repertoire, the whole thing, that say that this really sums us up?
I mean, I think going back into our history, I mean, Walking with a Ghost is a really, because it really represents the time period where we were indie rock, and I think because of just the strange nature of the song, I think it does reflect Tegan and Sara. And then I think it's a no-brainer that Back in Your Head, I think it's the bridge between that sort of folk indie rock start to the world, to the pop world, because it was Back in Your Head that was remixed by Tiesto. That's how we got into the dance world. And so I'd pick Back in Your Head, and then I think I'd pick Closer because it's the single, so that's the right thing to do. But it's also, I think, very revealing about our new sound. It's the most pop that we do, but it's, if you can handle Closer, then you'll love the rest of the record.
Thanks. So one thing actually that you said last night, Sarah, is that you've given up drinking for 3 months. Is that true? And
no.
Why
No,
choice?
no, not 3 months, but I
felt like 3 months.
No, I have been. We've had a very different lifestyle the last few months, the last 3 months, 4 months, just because we had sort of an interesting side effect, a leftover from a trip to India that we were all sort of dealing with. And
we were all
on antibiotics. Yeah. So it's been interesting because usually around the course of a record, you're sort of self-medicating, I guess, a little bit. You're stressed out and you're socializing, you're doing all this stuff. I'm actually used to a lot of the beginning stages of an album cycle being a bit clouded by like drunkenness and hangovers and whatever, and this has been the most sobering time of my life where, I've been in great stretches of...
We're at our best right now.
Yeah, well, just...
Lots of sleep.
Just trying to keep ourselves healthy and feeling like high energy, so yeah, we've been all making jokes that we've all been sick more than we've ever been in the past, because we're probably so healthy that we're just like pretty much picking up anything that we come in contact with. And we just played this big album release show in Los Angeles, and we're all sitting backstage and like, we're obsessed with what we eat, what we don't drink, basically, getting enough sleep. Are you getting sick? Did you have the sniffles? Like, what's happening? Like, we're just sitting backstage obsessing over our health, and we were kind of saying like how depressing it is that that's where we've arrived, that we're like probably at the height of our success, and we're all just sitting around worrying about if we've gotten enough sleep or if we're eating shitty. So
great stuff. Well, I'm sure you're going to be fine, and
I hope so. God,
you're going to hit the golden patch in your career, and
just be drunk all the time again.
Yes, yeah, and then you can drink after that. Yeah. Thanks a lot. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
And we'll have to wait till June then, see you again.
Yeah, we're going to announce dates in a couple weeks. I mean, there is talk of us coming back to do yet another promo thing, which might include some sort of live performance somewhere, but the actual tour is going to be June.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.